We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Administrator Crush.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the election of officers for the 2021 year. And I would like to nominate Terry Morrow as chair.
Second, Kolarz.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'll just close the nominations.
Cast a unanimous ballot for Commissioner Morrow as chair.
And cast a unanimous ballot for Terry Morrow as chair. Yes. Call the roll, please.
Durano?
Yes.
Kem?
Yes.
Kolarz?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Morrow?
Abstain.
Passes. Thank you. Congratulations, Terry.
Well, thank you, and thank you all. We'll turn, John. I'll take a baton from you, and John, thank you for your services this year, and I have a lot to learn from you, from Denny, from everyone on how to fill this role for the county. We'll turn to the position of vice chair. Are there nominations for vice chair?
Mr. Chair, I would move for Marie Drannel to serve as vice chair.
The nomination for Marie Drannel, is there a second?
Kolarz, second.
Kolarz, second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, I move that we proceed with a unanimous ballot for Marie Drannel as vice chair. Ryan, would you call the roll? We need a second, I'm sorry.
I'll make a second.
Okay. Sarah?
Commissioner Durano?
Yes.
Kem?
Yes.
Kolarz?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Morrow?
Yes. Marie, congratulations, elected by unanimous ballot.
Thank you.
We'll now turn to just a reminder on cell phones. I would also remind folks that they may want to mute if they are not speaking. Sarah, I think there's a little bit of a challenge in hearing you on the remote meeting. Do you want to do a quick test, Sarah, to see how that's going?
Yes. Test 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Is that better?
That's better.
Yes.
That is. Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Chair,
Right. Yeah. Yes, Michelle?
I would ask if there's a way for everyone to mute themselves when Sarah is speaking. There is a significant feedback. And I'm worried about the quality of the recording. If
Dale, are you responding to Michelle's point about feedback and muting people when Sarah's taking a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay, so Nate, for example, I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, I have no mic on my computer, so that shouldn't bother anybody. I got the phone muted when I'm not talking.
Okay. Well, let's proceed and let me know if it continues to be an issue, and we can work with Dale to fix it. Ryan, I'm going to turn to you for the meeting notice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting state and federal emergency declarations and guidance about limiting unnecessary person-to-person contacts, having an in-person meeting and public attendance at meetings is not practical. As a result, this meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statute 13D-021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Today's meeting is being conducted using Zoom online meeting technology. and is also being recorded. Notice was provided on how to participate in the meeting. All votes will be handled by a roll call. And at this time, if we could ask each commissioner to verify that they can hear the discussion, I will ask each commissioner to do that now. Commissioner Drantle?
I can hear.
Commissioner Kolars?
Yes.
Commissioner Kemp?
Yes.
Commissioner Lipke?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Morrow is here with me. Thank you. We'll now move to approval of the agenda.
Seek a motion to approve the agenda.
Kemp would move it.
Kemp moves second.
Druntle will second.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, Sarah, if you would take the roll call, please.
Commissioner Drannell,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes. We'll turn now to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any member would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I could, I may have a question for the county attorney on legal services.
Okay, so we'll pull number 9 so you can ask the question. We'll pull the legal services contracts for chip cases. Any other items? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the deletion of item 9?
Kolars moves.
Kolars
seconds.
moves. Kemp seconds. Sarah, if you would take the roll call, please.
Commissioner Drannell,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes. The motion passes. Would you prefer to do?
We can do that item now.
We're going to turn to, Michelle, we're going to turn to item 9 right now, the legal services contracts for chip cases. This is the item we pulled from the consent agenda. Maybe, Jack, with a small board, we can have discussion first. Do you have a question about those contracts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've talked about this before, and I just wanted to ask the county attorney, and I know she signed off on this, but is there a reason for us to be satisfied with the services that we're getting from these folks to protective services for children?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Kolars. These contracts relate to attorneys that are appointed by the court to represent parents who are not otherwise able to afford an attorney on their own in child protection and permanency proceedings. All 3 of these attorneys have served Nicollet County in this capacity for quite some time, and I do believe that the county should be very satisfied with the work that they are providing to parents in these important child protection matters.
Commissioner Kolars?
Mr. Chair and Madam Attorney, I appreciate those words, and I think it's good that we had that short discussion to discuss it. Thank you very much.
Is there a motion to approve the legal services contracts for chip cases?
Kolars moves.
Kemp
I'll
seconds.
second.
Okay, Kolars moves, Kemp seconds. Any further discussion on these contracts? Seeing none, Sarah, if you would take the roll, please.
Commissioner Drannell, Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes, the motion passes. We'll turn to public appearances. There's opportunity to make a public appearance during this meeting. Ryan, do we have any who are, anyone from the public attempting to participate virtually?
I do not see anybody on the screen from the public. Everybody listed appears to be the county staff. I will just ask, is there anybody from the public participating that would like to speak? It appears not, Mr. Chair, so I think we can move on.
All right, we'll move from public appearances to Health and Human Services update, a COVID-19 update. Cassie, we'll turn to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have just a couple of updates here this morning. I will start with case investigation and contact tracing. Our numbers as of early yesterday afternoon for total cases were 2,116 with 77 active cases. Our number of positive cases continues to decrease. Our current trends right now are much more related to workplaces, and unfortunately, we do have a couple of outbreaks at congregate living facilities currently. Our highest case numbers are also occurring in people ages 30 to 39. While we do continue to see this decrease, we are currently maintaining our expanded team for the next few weeks, likely into early February, so that we can be prepared for any surges that are related to the holidays, as well as return to school and sports and likely indoor dining. We also will be moving ahead with testing. We had talked about that briefly last month. We will have a testing site in Lafayette this Thursday, the 8th, or Friday, the 8th, in the county garage. We have a planned capacity for 200 tests to be completed. These tests will be saliva tests, but we will have some swabbing supplies on hand as well for those who might struggle with some of the saliva testing that can be difficult for people at times. We're also back to providing weekly testing at congregate living facilities due to a couple of outbreaks. So we have assigned staff to go there every week until the facilities have 2 weeks of no positive cases. And my last topic is vaccination. We did receive our first shipment of the Moderna vaccine at the end of December. It's currently frozen and stored in a secured location. We will begin administration of this tomorrow. Tomorrow's vaccine clinic will be in our North Mankato office. This will be a small clinic, and it will be a walk-in clinic for EMS responders and trainers, as well as North Mankato EMT. We will have our vaccine clinic also on the 8th in Lafayette at the same time that we do the testing. We will have a separate section where we'll be offering vaccine for the EMS from Cortland and Lafayette. And then on the 12th, we will offer vaccine in our St. Peter office. And this will be a much bigger event, likely around 50 individuals. This will be for school nurses, home health care workers, Gustavus Health Services, and pharmacy staff members. And our first couple of clinics we're testing out indoors. Our last one, we might do a drive-through model in the St. Peter Health and Human Services building, right out through the front. We're doing a few walkthroughs of that. This will be a learning experience for us, starting small as we plan to grow, because we do need to observe people for 15 minutes after they have their vaccination. We're trying to determine how to stagger that, how to keep social distancing, and how to make that efficient for everybody who's attending. During these first few clinics, we'll also start vaccinating our staff members who participate in COVID-19 testing and vaccine clinics, as well as our volunteer nurses. We're working in our own staff members sort of separately like that because we have 10 doses that get opened at one time, and they're only good for 6 hours once they are punctured. So we're working our staff members into all of those events as extra vials are available so that none of them would be wasted. We also worked with Michelle to develop a volunteer registration form and roster for nurses so that this week we can begin recruiting and training volunteer nurses. We do feel like we have capacity to take on these first couple weeks worth of clinics, but as we look to expand to the larger community, this is not something that we would have capacity to do with our own staff members. And lastly, related to vaccine, we have been getting a lot of questions about it, as you can imagine. Phone calls, messages, Facebook, requests from cities to have detailed information and flyers. People want a lot of information, considering what they've seen in other states, like, will there be long waits? Is it drive through? Is it walk up? What will it look like? And specifics on dates when we'll be able to get this out to the larger community. We are working on a press release and some other shareable pieces of information for the public. Unfortunately, we don't have the information regarding when we'll have those larger shipments and when we'll be able to share vaccine with the larger community. So we'll continue to share that information as it becomes available to us and share what we can with our community partners now. Any questions for me on any of these updates?
Cassie, this is John. I'm wondering about our county employees that meet with a lot of the public. Are they going to get a priority on getting shots?
So right now we're using the federal guidelines for the priority healthcare workers. Once we get down to the next level, which would be that priority 2, we'll be looking at all of our staff members here and throughout the county. So those who have regular exposure to the public would be higher up on the list than somebody in a position where they would not. So that's something that we're going to be working on in the next couple of weeks, is prioritizing that amongst county staff persons as well as really our entire population throughout the county.
Thank you. Would there be any benefit of a person that doesn't have symptoms to go that testing in Lafayette?
Absolutely. Particularly if you think you might have had an exposure, but also if you got together with anybody over the holidays, it's a really good time to get tested. Just, you could be asymptomatic. It's always good to check. So when we're right there, if you're curious about what the saliva testing might be like, I would encourage people to participate.
What were those hours in Lafayette again?
12 to 6.
12 to 6, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Cassie, I think we all realize the tremendous weight that has been placed on the shoulders of the folks in your office, and we appreciate your patience and your abilities to answer those concerns. Keep hearing about the fact that while vaccines may be there, it's getting them in shots in the arms into people. Are you looking at any reprieve from the state of Minnesota or future federal assistance to make that happen?
Not that we have heard of. At this point, we're being tasked with, those priority groups, and from the information that we've seen, it would appear that local public health would be doing more of the mass administration of vaccine as it becomes available. So lots of planning going on.
And I guess the follow-up question to that is, that sounds like a lot of more pressure on county offices or states to get that sort of thing done without federal assistance.
Correct. At this time, we've been given that $15,000 in funding from the state that we've been using for staff time and for some additional purchases. I hope that we will be lucky in that we have some great partnerships in our community, particularly with Gustavus. So we are hoping to draw upon nursing staff members to assist us as well.
Hey, Jamie, we're going to turn to the FFCRA report, if you would.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. I am here asking for the extension of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. As you recall, back in March 18th of 2020, this was first introduced by the United States Senate, and it was scheduled to sunset on December 31st of 2020. The current federal administration has not made any moves to extend this into 2021, and therefore we're recommending that the county take action now to extend these benefits through March 31st of 2021 for those staff that still have the time available to them. So the time that we're talking about here, it was 80 hours of paid time provided to an employee for one of 6 different reasons. basically covering if they've had an exposure and they need to quarantine, they are having symptoms, they've tested positive, or they're caring for a member of their household who maybe is positive or has symptoms. And then also if they have a child's school or place of care has closed and they need to be the child care provider, the 80 hours can also be used for that as well. Currently, we've had 78 staff actually use some portion of the time. That equates to 3,025 hours total. And we have 11 staff that have exhausted it. So we have quite a few that still haven't exhausted it, but it has definitely been very useful. It has also been proven to actually help flatten the curve somewhat because staff are staying at home and they're not coming into work when they're sick because they are provided the 80 hours of pay. I will take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Jamie on the proposed resolution? If not, is there a motion to? Oh,
I'm sorry. I'll make a motion, but I'll have a question.
okay. All right. Kolars moves the resolution.
Campbell second the resolution.
Kemp seconds. Commissioner Kolars.
Thank you, Terry. So will there be any reimbursement from the federal to help us if reimbursement is needed? And then on the first line, it says it's the United States that probably should be checked for spelling error. So will there be reimbursement, or is there reimbursement needed for this?
There was a reimbursement in 2020 for the dollars that were used towards that. Not sure for 2021 at this point. Ryan, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I believe the reimbursement you were talking about was the CARES funding. This was an eligible expense with the CARES funding. As far as 2021, we're not sure. That is all dependent on future funding from the federal government. The resolution before you also states that should the Families First Act get extended or be modified by the next administration, that we would automatically default to that. There are indications out there that the next administration is very interested in extending this act, so we'll wait and see. But as far as funding, that depends on the Congress and administration to come up with future funding for local government.
And Mr. Chair, I appreciate those answers. I just wonder what, and as I say, I'm in favor of extending this, but what is the county's expected exposure?
So really what this is allowing staff to use this additional time instead of their sick and vacation time that they've accrued. And many of our staff do have sick and vacation time accrued. So monetarily, it's a paid benefit that we would have regardless exposure to. But like Jamie said, if staff, it's proven that if staff have this additional time where they don't have to use their other sick and vacation time, are more likely to actually stay home and follow guidelines with COVID-19. So I believe there's a huge benefit to the county in extending this.
Commissioner Kolars, any further?
Well, thank you very much. Call the question.
Okay. Well, I think Commissioner Drannell may have had her hand up, if I might first.
Yeah. During the recent tax bill, the credits for the private sector were extended for this program. I don't know if it was extended for the public sector, though.
Jamie, do you have, I don't know if you have anything on that.
I don't believe that there was. I know there was a call from NACO to speak to that and encourage them to include local governments in some of that funding, but my understanding is that it was not extended to local government.
Commissioner Kolars, I know you called the question. I just want to make sure that Commissioner Lutke or Commissioner Kemp don't have any questions or comments.
Good. Thank you, Terry.
Okay. With that, Sarah, if you'd call, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kemp, go ahead.
That's fine. We'll continue on. That's fine.
Sarah, if you'd call the roll, please, on the resolution.
Commissioner Drano,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Polars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes, the resolution is adopted. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
We're going to turn now to property services and the comprehensive plan adoption resolution. Mandy, I think you're up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I do have a resolution within your packet for the final adoption of the comprehensive plan. This is the last step before we begin distributing the comprehensive plan to our local partners, townships, and cities with it. So what I'm asking today is for approval of the comprehensive plan resolution for that final adoption, and then we can continue with the final step.
Commissioners, we have a copy of the resolution in our packet. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Kemp would move the adoption of the resolution.
Kemp moves. Is there a second?
Drano will second.
Drano seconds. Any discussion on the resolution?
Mr. Chair, only to say I want to thank Mandy and the group that has been studying this for the last couple of years, right, Mandy?
Yes, correct.
And we've had a lot of input from many people, including commissioners and city officials, township officials, and everyone's had a whack at it. So I guess it's time to approve and go forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any other?
Mr. Chair, I would also like to add a special thanks to the citizens that participated. We did public hearings on this. There was a lot of engagement on our community partners, and so I'm very pleased with the work, and again, very thankful for the work that Mandy's office has done to bring this to fruition. So thank you very much for everybody.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Sarah, would you please take the roll on adopting the resolution?
Commissioner Drano,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Polars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Abstain.
Morrow.
Yes, the resolution is adopted. And Mandy, thank you as well for all your work, and everyone who's been mentioned. It's a great project. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll turn to Public Works and Seth, amendment to a MnDOT agreement.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. One item from Public Works today is to consider amendment number 2 to MnDOT Agreement 1034758. This agreement provided for reimbursement of preliminary engineering services by Gale Tech Engineering and SRF Consulting Group. And so anytime that you end up exceeding the approved dollar amount in the agreement, an amendment needs to be approved. All engineering services for the County Road 14 project, the preliminary engineering part of that project is complete, and so final expenses from SRF and Gale Tech exceeded the agreement amount, and so this amendment will authorize an additional amount of $6,208.95. And so I'm asking the board today to approve amendment number 2 to this MnDOT agreement and the attached resolution. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on this.
Move the amendment.
Temple second.
And we have a motion and a second on moving the amendment. I'm going to understand that to be, should we do the resolution as well? Same motion?
Right.
We're going to do the resolution as part of the same motion.
It's fine.
Any discussion on the motion?
Seth, this is John, Mr. Chair. Seth, everything seems to be up to snuff?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions on the motion?
Mr. Chair, I want to support the motion, but I'd like to ask Seth, after we take action here, to give us an update on what the roads were like before Christmas Day storm. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Sarah, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Drano,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes, the motion passes. Seth, I think we had a question about the Christmas Day snow and the roads.
So Commissioner Kolars, I'm assuming you're asking about the blizzard that we had right before Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a significant storm. I think it started snowing here around maybe 11, 12 o'clock, and our guys went out, of course, to start doing a little pre-treat work, but the conditions deteriorated extremely fast, and it was probably by 2:30 that we had zero visibility on the roads, and we made the decision at that point that it was much too dangerous to be out on the roads, and so we pulled the plows, and staff did not return out to the roads until 6 a.m. the next day. But there was lots of people out in those zero visibility conditions, lots of vehicles in the ditch. I know of one individual out on County Road 5 had gotten stuck in the middle of the road at, according to him, at 3 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, no cell phone, and our guys found him the next morning, probably around 8, 9 o'clock. So he had long stay in his vehicle. Scary situations.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate hearing that, and obviously, how are we doing a good job, Seth, in informing folks that we're closing roads in the county? Is that through the sheriff's office? Is that through some sort of social media? How are we doing, and are we doing a good job to do that?
Yes, we push notifications out to the sheriff's department and to dispatch, and then we've also done several postings on the county Facebook page.
So did you have to use the new equipment to clear those roads, Seth?
If we would have had, 2-3 feet of snow already on the ground, probably would have had to pull out the blowers. But with, the very little snow that we had on the ground already, snow removal wasn't an issue.
Other questions for Seth?
Mr. Chair, Seth, just a compliment to Nate. Was at a little meeting at Swan Lake last week, I believe, a little controversy between a landowner and a contractor, and I got it started, but Nate handled the situation very well, and everybody seemed happy. So thank you to Nate.
Thank you, John. Ryan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Seth and his staff have started working on the County Road 15 regrade project. I believe they've started with some of the right-of-way discussions, and we plan to have a discussion with the board at the January workshop with more details on that. But some of you have maybe heard from landowners on that. Seth, do you have anything to add with that, where you're at with that part of the project?
We've been working on County Road 15 for quite a while now. To develop and deliver a 12-mile reconstruction project takes several years to put everything together to get that project to construction. And so Stonebrook Engineering is our consulting engineer that is helping with the design work on that. They have done a significant amount of preliminary design to where we have a pretty good feel on what additional right-of-way and temporary easements that we need. There will be some continued refinement of their design. We're actually meeting with them for a big portion of this coming Friday to talk about those tweaks to the design. We have a draft right-of-way plat that identifies the additional right-of-way and permanent easements that we need, and we will continue to refine that. And we've been meeting with, we've probably met with, I would say, 80 to 90% of the landowners all along the corridor, informing them of the upcoming project and the potential impacts of their projects. Part of those meetings too is for those landowners to provide us feedback with any tile lines or driveway access changes that they may be looking for. But we're getting to the point now that we need to bring an appraiser on board to start providing land valuations, and the right-of-way acquisition process probably needs to start yet this summer if we are still on track to deliver this project, hopefully starting in 2022. And so, as Ryan mentioned, that we were thinking about coming to the January workshop to talk a little bit more in detail about this project and the steps to need to move it forward. But I'd be more than happy to answer any questions right now if anybody has them.
Any questions for Seth?
Mr. Chair, just before Seth goes on today, at our last area transportation planning meeting, there was discussion about the upcoming Highway 14 project from Nicollet to New Ulm, that multi-million-dollar project. And of course, as we know here in Nicollet County, we are going to be supplying $3 million in that rough estimate, or maybe a touch more, Seth. When would those dollars be expended? What's the timetable there?
With my last conversations with the DOT, they were anticipating looking for our contribution. It's around $3.5 million, and they were looking for that probably in the fall of this year, 2021.
And I'll just add to Seth's comments, myself, Heather, and Seth will be meeting and at some point bringing recommendations and options to the board for how to provide that funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions for Seth? Seth, I'll ask you, is there anything we left out, any final things you want to update the board on?
The only other project that we actually have construction still ongoing is Mathwitz Construction started the final stage of the surcharge on County Road 12, and that should be complete yet this week. So that'll be nice to get that done, and the weather's been surprisingly cooperative this early winter so far. Once that's done, the surcharge area will be closed off for the winter, and then we're just in a waiting game for that settlement to occur.
Okay. If there are no final questions for Seth, I'm going to thank you, Seth, so much for the update.
Yep.
We're going to turn to administration and resolution on the 2021 committee and board assignments and meetings qualifying for per diem payment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Annually, the board goes through the list of committee and board assignments for the year and decides who's going to take those assignments for the year. The resolution that's attached establishes those committee assignments and also establishes how per diems are paid for commissioners attending various meetings. So, as in years past, if the chair is fine with me going through the list, and we can have a discussion under each committee or board.
That's fine. What I would like to note, Ryan, before you start, is that we have had input by individuals on committee assignments, and that input has been shared, and I think we'll be discussing one of them as we get to that position.
Correct. That should work fine. All right. The first on the list is AMC delegates, and this.
Ryan, just one other thing I was going to say. If any commissioners want to stop on any of these items, if you would please raise your hand or should make a motion, we'll keep watching the screen. We don't want to skip by you in case you have something to say on a particular committee.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt me here. Some of these, as you know, are status quo each year. It's just the board is the committee. So but please feel free to stop me. So for AMC delegates, that is the county commissioners and then up to 3 additional staff. So I have included Jamie, myself, and Seth as we are the ones that typically attend the annual meeting where voting occurs. AMC Policy Committee, you can see on the list there who has been assigned to each AMC Policy Committee. Is there any requests for changes there?
You know, Ryan, we'll just keep going. And if someone will request a change, please raise your hand or speak up and we'll stop or go back to that committee.
Okay, yep, feel free to interrupt me. Adolescent Chemical Wellness Advocates and Coalition, Commissioner Morrow with Commissioner Kemp as a alternate.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kolars.
Spelling on adolescent, thank my mother for that.
Thank you, we'll add the S.
Thank you.
Board of Adjustments and Appeals, this is the variance board. One new member would be Dave Ubel, and then the remaining members you can see listed there. Board of Appeal and Equalization, of course, that's our meeting with the assessor in June. That by statute is the county board and property service manager or public service manager Jackie Kobit. Broadband Committee, Commissioner Kemp and Drano with Commissioner Morrow as an alternate. Brown Nicollet Community Health, that is the county board. Budget Committee, we follow a rotation that follows basically the same rotation as our chair and vice chair. So for 2021, that would be Commissioner Morrow and Commissioner Drano. Building Committee, we have not met in quite a while, but I anticipate when we do pursue a public works facility study, which we have intentionally continued to put off, that Seth and I both feel it'd be better to tackle that when we could start meeting in person again. But for now, that committee is Commissioner Kolars and Commissioner Morrow and related staff. The Canvas Board, which shouldn't have to meet in 2021, but is Commissioner Morrow and Kolars. County Board, that is just on there for per diem purposes. For any county board trainings and education, again, this is listed for per diem purposes. That's the entire county board is eligible for per diem for any trainings or education you attend. County board workshops, again, is the county board. Criminal Justice Committee, that is headed by County Attorney Michelle Zender Fisher and Commissioner Morrow, with all commissioners and related stakeholders participating. Drainage Authority, of course, is the county board. Drainage Authority Committee and Joint Drainage Boards, we have Commissioners Drano and Lipke with Commissioner Morrow as a alternate. Drug Court, Commissioner Kemp. EMS Joint Powers Board, Commissioner Kemp, alternate Commissioner Kolars. Envision 2040, that's not really active at this point, but that has been Commissioner Kolars and myself. Extension, in the last few years, we have designated the board chair and vice chair as the county board reps, and that is by statute that we have 2 commissioners participate.
So Ryan, if I could on that one. John, you've spoken with me about a desire to be on the extension committee or to continue to be on it. I'm certainly comfortable with that and would be happy to allow you to serve in my role, unless Marie, you would prefer to not be on the extension committee. I'm open to what you want to do as long as John's on it.
I'm flexible, whatever you two decide.
Well, let's do this. John, we're going to put you on the extension committee. Marie, I'm going to leave you on for the moment, but if you and I decide we're going to switch, that's fine with me.
Okay.
And then the rest of the citizen members are listed there as well. The HIPAA committee, which rarely meets, is staff oriented. Highway 14 partnership committee has been Commissioner Kolarz, Commissioner Lipke, alternate Commissioner Kemp. Highway 14 Task Force Committee, I believe this was the one that met for, oh, there's Seth.
Seth?
I think this committee could probably be taken off of here. Our role in that task force, our work completed probably a couple of years ago already. And so there's, in my opinion, there's no need for this committee anymore.
Yeah, with the funding approved for 14 now, I imagine this group will not meet again.
And I know Commissioner Drannell, you gave a thumbs up to Seth's idea as well. If there's no objection from others, we're going to remove the Highway 14 Task Force Committee. Okay.
Very good. Highway 169 Coalition, Commissioner Kemp, alternate Commissioner Drannell. Historic Preservation Ordinance Committee, these are citizen members. MTRAC is a public health committee. That's been Commissioner Kolarz with an alternate of Commissioner Kemp. Insurance Committee, Commissioner Kemp, Commissioner Morrow. Intergovernmental Youth Asset Collaborative. This is a group in conjunction with District 77, Blue Earth County, North Mankato, and Mankato. We historically have not participated, but we are invited to attend, and this group really is not that active. So I would say we can just keep a member designated, and if they meet again, we can decide if we want to attend, and that has been Commissioner Kemp. So Joint Airport Zoning Board for the Sewer Municipal Airport. They've asked us to have 2 members because the airport's zoning trickles into Nicollet County. So that is Mandy and John from Property Services. Legislative Committee, again, for per diem purposes, is the entire county board. Local Mental Health Advisory Council, Commissioner Kemp. Local Water Management Task Force, you can see the members there, including ex officio members of Commissioner Lipke and Commissioner Drannell. Lower Minnesota River West Committee, One Watershed, One Plan, Commissioner Drannell, alternate Commissioner Lipke. Maple Mankato Area Planning Organization, Commissioner Kolarz. Mankato Rehabilitation Center, Commissioner Kemp. MCIT Insurance, Heather handles all of our insurance here at the county, so she has been listed as a delegate with Commissioner Morrow and myself as alternates. Minnesota Valley Action Council, Commissioner Kolarz. Minnesota Transportation Alliance is the entire board and Seth. NACO is the entire county board. Nicollet County Law Library, Commissioner Drannell. Nicollet County St. Peter Liaison Committee, Commissioner Drannell, Commissioner Morrow. The Nicollet County North Mankato Liaison Committee is Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Kolarz. Nicollet County Township Association, the entire board. Noxious Weed Appeals Committee, Commissioner Lipke. Park Committee is Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Lipke and myself. And Seth, how did we come up with Commissioner Lipke and Commissioner Kemp? Were they on it? They were always on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Personnel Committee, Commissioner Drannell and Commissioner Kolarz. Planning and Zoning Advisory Committee, or the Planning Commission, would be Commissioner Drannell with Commissioner Morrow as alternate.
Can we stop there 1 second?
Sure.
I know, Ryan, that we have 1 vacancy. How do we fill vacancies on committees like that?
Mandy puts out advertisements and requests, and we actually have an application for folks to fill out. And we have a policy of trying to delegate, and Commissioner Drano can maybe explain this better than me, but certain members need to be township officials, and we try to have the membership spread across the entire county. So this position is open, and we're actively trying to seek a member.
Okay, thank you.
Recycling committee, that did not start here in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, but we hopefully can start that in the future. So
let's just one moment on this one. And John, we had talked about this one. I'll turn to you in a moment.
No, I was going to back up, Terry.
Yes, sir.
On the planning and zoning advisory, could Mandy let us know what kind of person from what area they're looking for?
Mandy, are you able to let us know on that one vacancy if there's a population area that we're looking at or the like?
We try to get a broad representation of the entire county so that it's basically fair representation with it. We are kind of looking, and we do have a pending retirement. You can see David Wendinger, his terms end at the end of December. So we're looking out in that area for sure, and maybe more central, west central of Nicollet County. We have had several names provided to us. We send out applications to the individuals. Sometimes we get the application back. Most of the time we don't. And what we do is when we do get one back, we'll keep that in our file. We're also trying to have a broad representation of the background or the experience that the individuals bring to us. In the past, there has been some concern that maybe we were a little bit heavy on the animal agricultural production representation, and so we're looking for individuals that can bring a different experience into it, to the planning and zoning and both the Board of Adjustments. So there's so many factors that we look at, but we're more than willing to send out applications, and we hope to get them back.
Mandy, if I might, just looking at the committee, it looks like Justin Lavin's term was expired. Is that right?
That is when he started. He goes to 12/31/22.
Yeah, that should be updated. That's a typo on our side. So that's 22.
Okay. All right. So John, is there a follow-up? Any questions from Andy in terms of what they're looking for?
I might just give her a name, but I can do that off camera.
Terrific. Great. Thank you. On the recycling committee, on the Tri-County, which we're going to get to, there's some work being done there. So I'm going to recommend that we leave the recycling committee as it is at the moment, and then we can revisit membership on it once we move forward on some Tri-County work.
That sounds like a good plan. Region 9 Development Commission, Commissioner Drano. Regional Economic Development Alliance, RETA, or it's our membership to Greater Mankato Growth. That's myself and has been Commissioner Kolars. Rural Minnesota Energy Board, Commissioner Lipke with alternate as Commissioner Kolars. Rush River Clean Water Partnership, Commissioner Drano, Commissioner Lipke.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, is the Rush River one necessary yet? Marie, do you have a comment?
It will be until we dissolve it at the joint board level.
Okay. Yeah, my understanding is they just don't have funding right now, but it still legally exists. Safety and security, that is staff membership. St. Peter Family Services Collaborative, Commissioner Kemp. St. Peter Regional Treatment Center Liaison Committee, Commissioner Morrow. SHIP Committee, Commissioner Kemp with an alternate of Commissioner Lipke. Soil and Water Conservation District, Commissioner Lipke. South Central HRA Board, Commissioner Kemp, and our citizen member of David Anderson. South Central Minnesota Regional Emergency Communication Board, Commissioner Kemp, alternate Commissioner Kolars. South Central Transit Board, Commissioner Drano, alternate Commissioner Lipke. South Central Workforce Council, Commissioner Kemp, alternate Commissioner Kolars. Southeast Minnesota Homeland Security Emergency Management Joint Powers, that is the board chair and our emergency management director. Southern Minnesota Tourism Association, the Historical Society Director, Jessica Becker, serves in that capacity. Traverse de Sioux Library, Commissioner Kolars with alternate of Commissioner Kemp. Tri-County Solid Waste Joint Powers Board, Commissioner Drannel and Commissioner Morrow. And True Transit Advisory Committee, this is our joint power board with the sewer and Blue Earth County on the transit bus service. That's Commissioner Drannel with alternate of Commissioner Lippy.
Let me ask commissioners if any comments, changes to the committee assignments.
Mr. Chair, Jack Kolars, I haven't had a chance to talk with Ryan about this, but there is a diversity council that meets Mankato, North Mankato, Blue Earth County area. And I know that Human Services has a person on it and from Nicollet County. I have an interest if there would be an expansion to our participation in the Diversity Council here in the region.
So we'll do, if it's okay with you, Commissioner Kolars, what we'll do is Ryan's writing it down. We'll find out information. If you've got information to share with Ryan about who leads it and the like, that'd be great.
And I appreciate that, Terry. I think it's Bukata Hayes. And I know that I had talked a little bit with Cassie about that and people in human services. You know, if it's something that can happen in the future, I think it would be good for Nicollet County to be represented there.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments, changes on the committee assignments? Seeing that, I don't believe we yet had a motion.
I don't believe
Mr.
so.
Chair, I'll move the resolution as attached.
Okay, Commissioner Kemp moves and Commissioner Lipke seconds. Seeing no further discussion, Sarah, if you would take the roll on the resolution.
Commissioner Drannel?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Kolars?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Morrow?
Yes. The resolution is adopted. Thank you all, and thank you all for your service on this broad range of committees. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Ryan, let's turn to the Nicollet County Relief Grant Program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, the Minnesota Legislature and Governor have passed legislation in December authorizing funding to Minnesota counties for relief grants to local businesses and nonprofits impacted by an executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nicollet County's allocation of these funds is $660,861.28. I've provided a lot of information that Sarah can put up on the screen here. And I also emailed that to board members. I'd like to go through some of the highlights of it, and then I've also included a draft business grant program, somewhat similar to what we did last fall with the CARES funding. And please feel free to stop me and ask questions. The first couple pages is an outline of the funding that is being provided. The state legislature and governor signed into law a bill providing $216.8 million of economic relief for businesses struggling from the pandemic. $88 million goes to businesses in the breweries, wineries, distilleries, fitness centers, bowling centers, bars, restaurants, and those similar businesses if they can show a 30% reduction in gross receipts over a certain time period. $14 million is being dedicated to movie theaters and convention centers. Nicollet County does not have any of these establishments that would qualify for this funding. And then the balance of $114.8 million is going to all 87 counties to set up business grant programs for businesses in Nicollet County. The legislation gives the county enormous flexibility on how the funds are distributed. The businesses must have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. They must be located in the county. They must not have any current tax liens with the Secretary of State. Again, the county can determine who is eligible for the grant funding. Nonprofits are eligible if they are a nonprofit that serves and earns revenue similar to a business. Grant funds must be used by eligible businesses or nonprofits for operating expenses incurred during the pandemic. Grants must be awarded by March 15th. And again, we received $660,000 to award. We also received $16,521 for grant administration. As of now, Heather and I are planning to administer this in-house because unlike the CARES grant that required a lot of documentation because of the federal funding, this does not require documentation. So under the proposed program and application that I have attached, we feel that we could administer this in-house and probably provide the funding more quickly. Some people did struggle with being able to fill out online applications with the CARES funding. So again, if we can keep this simple, not require documentation, we're going to try to handle this in-house. I'll jump now to the draft relief program overview and eligibility. The program is a mix of the legislative requirements that I just mentioned. Some of this is what we use for the CARES grant funding. And this also addresses businesses that maybe didn't qualify for CARES or other funding. The state legislature, they have given us enormous flexibility to set up these programs. And because of that and the fact that we don't have to require documentation, every county's program is going to look a little bit different based on their own individual business community and various situations that they have in their county. So I'll go through some of the highlights here. Grants would be eligible to businesses without employees for up to $2,000. Businesses with 1 to 50 employees could receive grants for up to $5,000. That's the same as the CARES program we had, except that the top grant amounts were $5,000 and $10,000 for those groups. Nonprofits, in the definition that I've come up with here for a nonprofit is defined as registered with the Minnesota Secretary of State, earn revenue similar to a business which is required under the legislation, and have 0 to 50 employees would be eligible up to $5,000. Additional grant funding options would then be for applicants that did not receive Nicollet County CARES funding in 2020 would be eligible for up to $10,000, assuming that they meet the requirements of this program. Businesses with a primary NAICS code, and I have them listed there. These are all of the industries and businesses that are receiving direct funding probably this week or next week from the Department of Revenue with the $88 million I mentioned on the previous page from the state of Minnesota. These businesses will get those checks, but there's going to be some of those businesses that do not receive a check from the state. If they, let's say for example, they had reduced receipts of 25% instead of 30% required by the states, they would not get the state funding, but could be eligible potentially for our funding here. And really the intention of this legislature was to provide this county funding for businesses that are in need, but maybe did not qualify for this direct state funding, or other industries that are struggling, that have been left out of other funding programs. And then last, hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, and other similar for-profit lodging properties would be eligible for grants up to $10,000. Again, this is an industry that has not received direct funding, was not eligible for the $88 million of state funding going out here this week or next week. And the information that we've received that this industry is really struggling, so I'm proposing that we allow them to have grants up to $10,000. Use of funds, this is right in legislation. Grant funds must be used by the eligible business or nonprofit for operational expenses, which includes payroll, incurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm proposing that we have them self-certify to that. Eligibility requirements then, and this is required, they must have a physical establishment in Nicollet County, must have no current tax liens with the Secretary of State, and must have been adversely impacted by a Minnesota governor executive order related to the COVID pandemic. And examples of that are full or partial business closure, limited service or customer service allowed, and stay-at-home orders, reducing customers, or travel restrictions. The next eligibility piece is related to financial hardship. This is not required in the legislation, but the message that we received from AMC that they heard from the legislature as they debated this legislation is they want to see counties distribute this money to those most in need and those that can demonstrate a financial hardship. They don't want us just to hand out $5,000 or $10,000 to the first 100 businesses that apply. They want us to somehow validate that there's a need there. So what I have here is two options for businesses to qualify under a financial hardship. It would be either to show a reduction in revenue of 25% for at least 3 months between March 1st and December 31st, 2020, compared to the previous year, or to have experienced revenues or expenses exceeding revenues for at least 3 months between March 1st and December 31st. And if we get an application that seems like we have questions on it, or it's an industry that we think maybe didn't have those types of hardships during the pandemic, we can request for financial verification of those hardships. The next items, these are very similar to what we had in the CARES grant. The applicant must be current on property tax statements, have no IRS debt, and not be in bankruptcy, and licensed and in good standing.
Brian, can you stop 1 second there?
Sure.
Maria, I just have a question for you on this item. As I read no IRS debt, I'm not sure if that term is meaningful or not.
I'm sure they all have IRS debt because they don't have money to pay their payroll taxes. Can you scroll that up a little bit? It got beyond me here. Define current IRS debt or IRS liens or?
Yeah, I was maybe going to actually, we could add IRS debt for 2019 and prior years, not for 2020.
That might be better.
Yeah, that's a good point, Commissioner Morrow. I was thinking about that as well.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as long as we're in this section, if I may.
Please.
In that section, which we're seeing now, certified financial hardship, reduction in revenue of 25% for at least 3 months, and that's any 3 months, or are you thinking consecutive, or because there were kind of on again, off again times, so are we giving them a pretty broad range there?
Yeah, this is a broad range, and this piece on financial hardship, I have not seen a county that has had a similar definition for this, and again, the state left it open to us to decide what that is. Some are requesting or qualifying it by actual calendar quarter. This is broader than that and says any 3 months.
And I support that. I was just wanted to be clear in my mind of if there was more to that than that, because I think because of the various people we're trying to serve, there could have been openings and closures, and not everything happens to work in a financial quarter for everybody. So I support that. Thanks.
Yeah, some counties are making it only from the last quarter of 2020, which is very narrow. Some from the middle of the year. And in my mind, the pandemic has been one event really since March. And there's going to be industries out there, like you're saying, Commissioner Kemp, that's maybe experienced 2 bad months, got back on their feet in the summer, and then experienced the bad month in the fall. And I think we're better off treating it as one event, is my opinion.
I agree.
Great, thank you, Ryan.
Other items here, I put in must have been operating prior to July 1st. Now, under the CARES program, we had March 1st. I did hear from some businesses that opened during the pandemic that did not qualify for CARES. So I put in here July 1st, thinking that they would have at least had 6 months of operating expenditures and revenues to try to qualify for one of the financial hardships. And actually they couldn't qualify for the comparison to revenues for the previous year. So they would have to show a 25%, or excuse me, 3 months of expenses exceeding revenues in the last 6 months of 2020 to qualify. So it at least allows those businesses that did open up in 2020 to potentially be eligible. The next item is optional, but what it requires is the applicant must be in compliance or have complied with Minnesota Governor executive orders related to business closure requirements or limitations placed on service delivery. I don't believe we've had a situation yet in Nicollet County where businesses have willfully opened in violation of a governor's executive order, but as we've all heard, that has occurred around the state. So I would propose that any business that has or did do that not be eligible.
Great. Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lipke.
Yes, Ryan, what about gas stations? Are they eligible?
Yes, if they can say that they were impacted by an executive order, which I suppose they could say with the stay-at-home order, they had less people coming in their establishment, but then they would also have to qualify under one of the financial hardships as well.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be an industry potentially that Heather and I would maybe require documentation on. I don't know if how much they've suffered or not, because they have been allowed to stay open. So we would have to evaluate that at that time.
Well, people were driving less and buying less gas because of the things going on.
Right, very true. The last item there then is, and this is totally optional and can be taken out, is to require certification from the applicants that the pandemic-related grants received from all sources they don't exceed the amount of operating expenses the applicant incurred from March 1st to December 31st. Now, this is been a topic amongst a lot of counties. Several counties are concerned and they want to assure that they're not providing additional grant funding to those businesses that have received several grants during 2020 related to the pandemic, and the chance that those businesses don't really need those grants or additional funding. My thought with this is that, again, the pandemic is one event, and let's say you had operating expenses of $50,000, but let's say you received county funding, city funding, and PPP funding for $55,000, so you show a profit of $5,000. That would make you ineligible for this program, but you're not getting rich on a $5,000 profit. So I can go either way on this. I know Commissioner Drano and I had a discussion on this. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Marie?
Well, my problem was operating expenses. Does that include cost of goods? Does that include payroll? All of that, or is that total expenses?
Yeah, and quite honestly, I don't know. I guess the question is, do we care how many other grants they've received, or if they can demonstrate a need? We assume that they've had a difficult year in 2020 and deserve this grant.
I guess I would leave it out. It just makes it easier to administer the program also.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't think, even if you received all the PPP and other grants available, I don't think you probably got rich as a business owner in 2020. So any other thoughts on that from other commissioners? Take it out, Commissioner Lippy.
Yeah.
Denny?
Yeah, I'm fine removing it. It's fine.
Okay.
Jack? He's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll go quickly through some of this here then. Ineligible businesses, this is very similar to the list that we had for CARES. I did include some obvious ones like retail and off-sale liquor stores. I added them to the list. But again, that list is very similar. Documentation, again, this would be essentially all self-certification by the applicant. And you can see in the attached application, we have several disclaimers related to what they're signing off on. So it would be a completed application, an IRS form W-9, and then if Heather or I felt that we needed to follow up to verify anything, we could request for additional documentation. Ranking criteria then, if the amount of funds requested exceeded available funding, I would propose that we would give first priority to those businesses that did not receive a Nicollet County CARES grant. And then second priority would be to those businesses eligible for the state Department of Revenue payment going out here this week in the food and beverage industry, but did not meet the requirements of the state for that funding. We give them second priority, as we know they've probably all suffered the most in the last year here. And then the remaining information would just be how the grant could be filled out. Again, we're proposing a PDF fillable document they can download online, hopefully email in or leave in our Dropbox. And can follow the questions if they have those. I won't go through the application because essentially the application is exactly what I just went through. It's just in the question format. You can see the disclosures there. And then the last 2 pages includes a timeline. There's the timeline. I'm proposing that if the board was comfortable today moving forward, you could pass the attached resolution. If you wanted more time to discuss this, I would propose we have a special meeting. Again, the intent from the legislature was to get this money out as quickly as possible. Quite honestly, if the board approve this today, we could probably get this out this week, but part of the problem is that the state money coming from the Department of Revenue to businesses, we really need those businesses to know that they're getting that funding before we administer our grant, because we ask them specifically if they receive that. So counties are basically waiting for that money to come from the state before they start their programs. So so looking at grant applications potentially being accepted from January 18th to February 5th, a 3-week period. We process in-house from the 8th to the 19th, and then possibly a second round in late February. All grants must be approved by March 15th. All checks must be written by the 1st of April, and any unspent money returned to the states by the 15th of April. And the last page is a resolution, very similar to what the board approved for the CARES business programs. Essentially approving the attached program, as you see here, and giving Heather and I the option to make administrative changes as various things come up and new guidance becomes available, and then to also, in order to expedite and get the funds out quickly, make the final determination on the grant recipients based on the program you approve, and with obviously providing you a list of those receiving funding at a later date. So is there any questions with this?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lipke.
Does Ryan have any reasons why we shouldn't approve this today?
I am comfortable with where it's at.
I'll move adoption.
Ample second.
Lipke moves adoption. Kemp seconds. Commissioner Kolarz, I think you may have had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, and I was curious to hear what Ryan was going to say after yes, but I didn't hear that.
Did you say yes to any concern reasons not to adopt?
Oh, no, so I'm comfortable with moving forward. I think the program is one that'll work well in Nicollet County. Again, each county kind of has a different situation. Here in Nicollet County, 90% of our businesses are in 2 cities, and those 2 cities have provided funding sources as well from their own coffers. One city more than another, but we kind of have a feel from those cities, and after administering the CARES grant program, of what the need is out there, who we maybe missed with the CARES funding, and we all kind of probably have an idea of who's probably struggling in our communities as well. So I think this program would serve those in greatest need and provide flexibility to include as many businesses as possible that are in need.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Commissioner Kemp.
Ryan, on the topic of how quickly will the counties receive notice of the dollars granted through I think DEED is running that program to do the direct payments. How quickly will we know that that's been done, and will we have a sense of that in not a way that will inhibit your work?
Yeah, so we've had a little bit of a roadblock that the money's going to bars and restaurants is coming from Department of Revenue, and out of data privacy restrictions, according to their interpretation, they will not provide us a list of who is getting those direct checks. But with that said, AMC has reached out to them for us, and all indications are that they should have received an email, and Commissioner Drannell maybe knows of businesses that did receive this, that they should have received an email from the state saying they were qualified and getting a check, and they should be getting checks, it sounds like, early next week. So if that is the case, we could roll this out by the end of next week and not have to necessarily wait till the 18th.
Commissioner Drannell?
Yeah, the emails did arrive. They're very, very generic, and they went to the email address on file for that business. It doesn't say how much they're getting. It just says, you know, based on employment statistics with DEED that you file with your quarterly payroll reports, and the fact that they can look at your sales tax. And they're not mailing, they're mailing checks, they're not direct depositing it. I haven't heard anybody get the money yet.
Yeah, the last I heard from AMC via Dewar. Department of Revenue was the 11th or 12th of January. So early next week, it appears.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Commissioner Kolar, did you have an additional question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ryan, thank you for your explanation about your satisfaction before the motion came to approve. I think it's important that we remember that, hopefully this program will be helpful. And we need to thank Governor Walz for his leadership on this Minnesota Business Assistance in the absence of timely federal assistance, and the legislature that approved it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll support it.
Mm-hmm. Any additional comments or questions? If not, I have one quick one. I think, Michelle, I don't know if this is a question for you or not. I see that it's a resolution approving Nicollet County's relief grant program. And I just can't recall whether we had an earlier relief grant program that we're using the same title for multiple programs.
It's a different name.
It's a different name, okay.
Yeah.
Michelle, you're off the hook.
I had to double check yesterday to make sure we didn't do that, so yeah.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll turn to Sarah to call the roll.
Commissioner Drano?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Kolars?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Morrow?
Yes. The resolution is adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, do you have additional items?
Nothing else today, Mr. Chair.
And I have lost the agenda.
Sure. I will add under informational items, we do have an item there. Could you go to that, Sarah? Click on informational. County Assessor, Lorna Sandvik, she submits this every year. If you could just scroll down a little bit more, Sarah, I don't have that in front of me, but so every year, the board does not need to take action on this, but statute says that it be presented to the board as informational. These are just clerical errors and corrections that the assessor's office has made on various properties. And you can see the date range there. So again, this is just informational.
Great, thank you. Chair's report, I have just two quick comments. I note that January is Radon Kit Month, and that radon kits are available, Ryan, is that correct?
That is correct. We are doing, or Brown Nicollet Environmental Health is doing that a limited time frame and in the lobby of the HHS building. So I believe they've provided press releases on that.
The only thing I wanted to report was receiving an email last night. I won't get into the details other than to say that it's tremendously complimentary of Nate Tisch and his work in securing funds in COVID-19 relief for Minnesota veterans. And it's a remarkable amount of work that Nate and his folks did to secure funding related to COVID-19 and veterans. And this email says it's amazing, and then uses the phrase, he whooped our butts in another county in terms of securing funds for our veterans. So I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate and to thank Nate and his team for all they're doing for our vets. Meetings,
Commissioner reports.
You can turn to Commissioner reports. Commissioner Lipke.
Did the Brown Nicollet Public Health meeting on Zoom, ditch meeting with Gaylord where I faded out before the end of the meeting. Had a little ditch meeting over at Swan Lake, and yesterday had a tour of County Road 15 due to a citizen's concerns over the upcoming rebuild. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Go to Commissioner Kemp.
Since our last gathering in December, my other attendance was at the Zoom meeting for our public health, and that is the extent of my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kolars?
I think Commissioner Drantle is ready. I'll wait for her.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Drantle.
Stuff happens when you have multiple monitors and you're not at the right spot. Lots of union negotiations, Brown Nicollet Community Health Board, some Region 9 revolving loan committee stuff, and just life in general.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Kolars.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had the GMG meeting, a TDS meeting, CHS ditch meeting, Minnesota Valley Action Council, and 2 union negotiations with Commissioner Drantle. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I joined all of you on the Brown Nicollet Health and also Public Health Update. And Maria, I couldn't remember whether we had our St. Peter or not. Let's turn to meetings and conferences. Ryan, are there any?
No. The next real meetings from AMC would be the legislative conference in later February. So we'll get those dates out. It'll be virtual again. Oh, I will say, Mr. Chair, I am going to try to schedule a meeting with our legislators and federal staffers like we've done in the past, but I'm going to propose we do that virtually via Zoom. So I'm looking at the end of January, first part of February. So I will reach out to see what dates work for everyone, and we'll go from there.
Michelle, before we turn to per diems and expenses, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you had anything to report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We continue to work here in a environment of Zoom hearings in court, but they are working well and moving cases forward, and also continue meeting with our school partners and community partners to address educational challenges of students and families moving forward. Had a meeting this morning and learned of all of the different plans in Nicollet County for the schools to start moving back toward in-person learning. So that was very helpful news and excitement in our schools about moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I ask Michelle some questions about that Zoom stuff?
Please.
So, Michelle, do defendants appear via Zoom? Do witnesses appear via Zoom? That's got to be a lot of Zooming.
It is. Right now we're under a Minnesota Supreme Court order that states that all hearings, absent specific order of the Supreme Court, must be held by Zoom. So we are precluded from having in-person hearings. That order goes through February 1st, and I haven't heard whether that will be changing or not, or extended. So we are having our hearings via Zoom. I had a child protection trial via Zoom. And witnesses are appearing by Zoom, defendants are appearing by Zoom. I'm not going to suggest that it isn't without some challenges, but it has been working fairly well to at least not be completely at a standstill with court proceedings.
Commissioner Kolars?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. So the judge is in her Zoom room, you're in your Zoom room, the other defense attorneys are in their Zooms, and it's all coming together.
Right, the screen appears much like our screen here, where everyone is appearing by that Zoom conference. If attorneys need to consult with their clients, they can be put into a private room, and that conversation can occur between attorney and client, and then they're allowed to control when they come back into the full court process, or full court hearing.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Michelle? Michelle, anything in addition?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move to approval of per diem and expenses.
Temple move it.
Kemp moves.
I'll second.
Lipke seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, Sarah, if you would take the roll, please.
Commissioner Drantle?
Yes.
Commissioner Kemp?
Yes.
Commissioner Kolars,
Yes.
Commissioner Lipke,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrow.
Yes, the motion is adopted. Ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Kemp
Second.
moves. Lipke seconds. Sarah, if you would take the roll, please.
Drano,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes, the motion is adopted. The meeting is adjourned. I'll now call the Drainage Authority meeting to order. We have one consent agenda item, which is approving the minutes of the previous meeting.
We'll move the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve? Kemp moves to
Second.
approve. Lipke seconds. Sarah, if you would take the roll.
Drano,
Yes.
Kemp,
That's the way I have it, right?
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
I'm just going
Lipke,
to adjourn.
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes, the motion is adopted, and we'll adjourn the Drainage Authority meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.